Hey guys, it's Jessica.
And this is Kendra, and you're listening to
Lucid Lab.
I feel like it's been forever since we recorded.
I know, it does.
And it's back to school week, and your parents were in town.
It's my daughter's birthday. Everything kind of just got smushed together.
So now we're cramming in some episodes because we took time off.
Took time off just from recording.
Yes.
But not from doing
editing
things. And then Kendra's going to be leaving. Finally taking that massive trip she's been teasing this whole time.
I feel like I just mentioned that the other day, and now here it is, and we're leaving. And yeah, this is the last episode we'll have before I'm gone for 16 days in Peru.
That's crazy.
And I won't have my laptop with me. I won't really have Wi-Fi all that often because I'm going to be up in the mountains.
Getting bit by bugs.
I am probably. I'm going to be roughing it, camping. I'm kind of scared, actually, now that it's like coming down to the wire. I'm like, can I do this?
Well, it'll be transformative for you, I do believe.
And that's what they say. That's what I'm hoping for. And with the energies going around right now, I'm looking forward to kind of getting out away from the chaos of normal life, only focusing on survival, I guess, or taking in nature and all of that.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice. With that, we did want to announce that you're going to see a couple of things different from us over the next 2 weeks because I won't be here.
She won't, and I don't think anybody wants an episode just from me.
It would be really hard for you to try and...
I would just jump back and forth between our seats, and I'll try and be you. It would be funny.
But instead of that, we had a different idea.
Yeah.
We're going to bring back some of our older episodes and we'll record some new intros for that, bring some things that you haven't heard yet. Maybe if you're a newer listener, I don't know if you've, gone all the way back.
Right. I think it would be fun for anybody who's listened to everything too, because they probably haven't listened to these in a year.
Yeah.
So it will be cool either way. So please come back and listen.
Yes. So we're taking that 2-week rerun is what we're calling it. And then we'll be back mid-September with our next new episode after this one.
Yes. So what are we doing today?
So today we are covering the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. This is also frequently referred to as the Scream murder, as the circumstances around her death seem to mimic or play out like the popular movie franchise Scream.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard of this at all, so I don't know anything. And that's scary because that's everyone's number one fear is one of those movies becomes reality.
I had not heard about this one either. One of our listeners sent this in as something we should look into.
Okay.
It's a newer case, and it is about 16-year-old Cassie Jo Stoddart. She was found stabbed to death approximately 30 times in the living room of her aunt and uncle's home in Pocatello, Idaho. She had been staying the weekend at their house while they were out of town. And as we say on way too many episodes, this was an area where violent crimes like this did not occur. Pocatello is, I think, one of the bigger cities in Idaho, but it's still got that small town feel. The good thing is, although violent crimes like this didn't happen in Pocatello, the police actually handled it well in this case. So they were prepared for the homicide investigation. So there will be as happy of an ending as there can be. They would be armed with all the evidence they would need to convict these perpetrators. There are 2 of them.
Are they boys?
Of course.
Oh, God.
What the evidence would lead the police to find, though, was quite shocking. An unimaginable nightmare for several families. I don't want to give too many details away this early on. So for now, I just want to begin with talking about the victim, Cassie Jo. She was as sweet and innocent as they come.
So sad.
So Cassie Jo Stoddart was born on March 21st, 1990. I wasn't able to find out much about her early life because she was only 16 when she was killed.
Right.
So she had so much life left to live.
Yeah.
Cassie was the middle child of her family. She had an older sister, Christy, who had already graduated and moved out of the house by the time our story will begin. And then she had a younger brother, Andrew, that still lived at home with her. At the time of her death, she was living with her mother, Anna, and Anna's boyfriend of 9 years, Victor. The children spent most of their childhood living with their maternal grandparents in Pocatello, Idaho, but they had always maintained a relationship with their mother. She just had some issues and couldn't get it together, couldn't afford to raise her kids.
Sounds like it.
Now that Cassie is in high school and so is her brother Andrew, Anna had recently gotten her life together enough for the kids to move back in with her. And they had been with their mom and her boyfriend for the past 2 years. things were going well. They had a good home life. Victor was a good stepfather to the children.
Okay.
Cassie was a beautiful Hispanic 16-year-old girl. She had long dark hair with reddish highlights and big brown eyes. She had just started her junior year at Pocatello High School. She was a straight A student who took school very seriously. She didn't do too much in the way of extracurricular activities, but she was that girl. She was just friendly. Everybody liked her. She would be described as a little shy, but she always had a close circle of friends whom she trusted, and she could really be herself around. She was what I would call pretty straight edge for a teenager, especially. She was very focused on school, and she had a goal of becoming an attorney one day.
Oh, wow.
So she felt like drinking alcohol and smoking weed was a waste of her time, and she didn't.
I mean, she's right.
Take part of it, especially when you're that age.
I know our parents tried to drill it into us, but it's what we do.
You just want to do it.
But she's so right.
So Cassie had a MySpace account, as everybody did back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Because this story is going to start in 2006.
Are they still up?
The MySpace?
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't checked in...
If they are, I probably still have one.
Forever. Yeah, me too.
Because I had one probably around this time. I'm trying to think when MySpace came out. I feel like it was in like 2002, 2003 timeframe.
I know for sure that I didn't get one until 2005 because I was so out of the loop. I'd already moved to Denver. I left everybody behind in New Mexico. So I wasn't your normal teenager. Yeah. And I think I was talking to a friend one day and she's like, do you have MySpace? I'm like, what the fuck is that?
I just remember being able to pick out your favorite song or...
Right. Yeah.
It was actually a pretty fun...
It's fun to put it together.
I liked it, I think, maybe better than Facebook because that's what everybody switched to from MySpace. And Facebook, you couldn't customize as easily.
No.
So on her MySpace account, she listed her dislikes as judgmental people and drama queens. She had no time for that.
Yep.
She had a longer list of things she loved, including penguins, turtles, Hershey bars, Skittles, permanent markers, hemp bracelets, snakes, snow, warm blankets right out of the dryer, and summertime.
Oh, that's sweet. I love the permanent markers.
I know.
I mean, because it's very specific and it's true.
She mentions that she liked her name Cassie, but didn't like that it was mostly associated with blonde cheerleader type girls.
Oh, well, you're changing it up.
She was very proud of her Hispanic heritage and culture.
Yeah.
She had a boyfriend, Matt Beckham, who was a 16-year-old fellow junior at her high school. Cassie and Matt had known each other and been friends since junior high, but had only began dating about 5 to 6 months before her death. They spent most of their time together hanging out at Cassie's house when they weren't at school. Matt liked to smoke pot, and Cassie didn't really care for that.
I was about to say Matt Beckham sounds like a boy cheerleader's name. So he's
Beckham.
Also changing it up.
Everyone said they got along so well and were such a cute couple, but the only thing they ever fought about was how much he liked to smoke weed.
Well, you can't take the weed away from the boy.
No, and you just have to love them for who they are. So this brings us to the weekend of September 22nd, 2006. Cassie was going to be house sitting for her aunt and uncle, Frank and Allison, and they had 3 cats and 2 dogs. She had pet sit for them several times before. They were leaving on a Friday and returning on Sunday afternoon. Cassie had just completed her driver's training classes and she was saving up money to buy a car.
Mm-hmm.
Allison and Frank's house was very large. Although it was on a main public road called Whispering Cliffs, it was pretty isolated. It was about 2 to 3 miles outside of the main part of Pocatello. On Friday afternoon, Cassie's mom, Anna, drove her and her boyfriend, Matt, over to the house to drop them off for the weekend.
Ooh, they get to spend the night together?
No.
Oh.
Matt was going to stay with Cassie as much as he was allowed to by his parents over the weekend.
Okay.
Anna told Cassie to follow the strict rules, no partying at the house, no inviting anyone else over except for Matt. And then she drove off. She didn't know that this would be the last time she would ever see her daughter.
Oh, my God. Worst nightmare every day.
I know.
Walking away from your children.
That evening, Anna called the house to check on Cassie, and she didn't answer. When she called back again later, Cassie did answer the phone, and she told her mom that she had not heard the phone ringing earlier, and also that one of the phones in the house seemed to be on the fritz.
Okay.
But her mom didn't worry. She was there with her boyfriend and the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we're in a very safe area, everyone thinks, and no one's really considering that there's going to be anything bad happening when you drop your 16-year-old off at this house.
Right.
So while they were there, 2 classmates and friends of Cassie's boyfriend, Matt, stopped by the house around 7 p.m. Their names were Tori Adamczyk and Brian Draper. They were also juniors at Pocatello High School. When they showed up, Matt and Cassie took them on a tour of the house, which I remember this when I had
this stuff I don't own. It's not mine.
You start dreaming like, one day I'll own this big house. So Cassie was showing them around. They went down into the basement where there was a large room, kind of like a rec room.
Yeah.
And there was a weight bench down there. And they were all like, oh, let's see how much we can bench press. And while they were down in the basement, they grabbed some popsicles from the freezer. And then they all decided to go watch a movie in the upstairs living area.
Okay.
They had a very large video collection to choose from. And Tori picked out Kill Bill Volume 2.
Oh, I like the Kill Bills.
Yes, good movies. Before the movie was even over, Brian Draper seemed anxious and said he needed to head home. So the boys left the house around 9:30 p.m. Matt and Cassie continued to hang out and watch another movie, but while they were in the living room, they heard some odd noises coming from the basement, and one of the dogs would sit at the top of the stairs looking down, growling and barking. Cassie was a little freaked out, but they also were kind of in this frozen moment, and neither one of them wanted to actually go down into the basement, so they just let it be. And then the power in the house went out.
Oh.
That is when Matt and Cassie got really spooked.
Yeah.
Matt called his mom at that time and told her that something strange was going on at the house, and he asked her if he could spend the night there with Cassie.
Well, that's nice of him.
Mm-hmm. But his mother said no.
You're just going to leave a girl at the house by herself with no power?
His mom did offer that Cassie could come with them and spend the night at their house, but she did not want 2 teenagers spending the night alone with no parental supervision.
Goodness. Sex might have saved her life.
And the truth of the matter is they already had sex. We'll find out later. That's why she didn't answer the phone the first time her mom called.
I kind of thought that
they were already hooking up. I mean, you got to know as a parent when you have 16-year-old kids, they're probably having sex.
Don't remind me. I have a 10-year-old right now. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
But it's like, I do question.
I know.
If my son called and said this weird stuff is going on, I wouldn't want him to leave a 16-year-old girl by herself.
I wouldn't want either of them there.
And that's kind of what the mom said as well. She can come with us. But Cassie, being the responsible girl that she was, told Matt that she couldn't just leave the house and the dogs and cats unsupervised. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, I'm going to stay here.
Well, hopefully she called her mother.
So this is the one decision that sucks in the story.
Yeah.
Is that this could have all been averted if Cassie had either gone with Matt or Matt had been able to stay the night.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
Right.
Maybe Matt would have become a victim if he stayed there.
I think that's a very big possibility. So maybe that saved Matt's life.
And what we'll find out later is the whole reason his mom wanted him to come home is because she had a surprise for him that night. And I think if that hadn't been going on, she might have let him stay too.
Oh, okay.
So about 15 minutes after Matt got off the phone with his mom, the lights did come back on.
Oh, okay.
Cassie told Matt she felt like she would be fine. It was probably just something with the power grid. They were kind of out in the country.
Right.
And she said, I'll be fine. I have the dogs here. So around 11 p.m., Matt's mom showed up and he left Cassie. The surprise that his mom had in store for him was that his dad was with her, and he hadn't seen his dad in several months because his dad had been in rehab.
Oh, yeah. That's
and so it was
special.
like a sweet moment.
Yeah.
It was a surprise. And then Matt went home with his mom and dad, and they ended up staying up till like 3 o'clock in the morning, just catching up and watching movies. So
that is probably the best reason to say no.
I know. So then we come to Saturday morning, and Matt and Cassie's mother, Anna, are trying to reach Cassie at the house, but no one's answering. Assuming it was because the power had been off and on, Matt wasn't too worried at first. He thought maybe the power had just gone back out and she would let him know when she could call. I was about to say this is back in the day before cell phones, but it's not.
Yeah.
She did not have a cell phone.
Oh, okay. Which is interesting because this would be 2006, you said?
Mm-hmm. I think cell phones were still not something everybody had back then. And Cassie and Matt did not come from like well-to-do families. It got later into the evening and nobody had been able to reach Cassie. And that's when Matt started getting concerned, and he called Anna, her mom, again to see if maybe Cassie had come back home or something.
Yeah.
And Anna told Matt that she had tried calling several times with no answer as well. But then she got caught up taking her younger son to football practice or something and just hadn't really worried about it. That's when Matt told Anna that the power had gone out the night before.
Oh, this is the next day?
Yeah, this is Saturday. We're now into Saturday evening. So this is hard because I don't want to judge Cassie's mom because I know how I would react as a mom. Some people say some pretty harsh things about Cassie's mom, like, why didn't she drive over there to check on her daughter?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. For whatever reason, maybe it's just being naive and thinking nothing bad happens, but she did not drive over to check on her daughter.
She's also 16. That's almost like its own stepping point to becoming 18. It's like you're expected to give 16-year-olds more space.
Yeah.
And this was a job that she was doing. She was probably like, don't you trust me to do my job? Like, you don't have to check on me.
Yeah.
But if you're not reaching her, that's another story.
And I read that like where Cassie's mom lived and where the aunt and uncle's house was only about a 3-mile drive. So
yeah,
it does seem odd that they wouldn't just go check, but they didn't. And Matt didn't have a car. So he was unable to go over and check on her himself, but he was concerned. So then we get to Sunday morning, and that's when Anna realized that maybe something was wrong because nobody had talked to her daughter since
the entire
Matt left
day.
the house.
Yeah. That's when she should have gone over. If she hadn't reached her the entire day, give me a break. You do go over.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be one of them then.
I know. I don't know what her mom was going through. I know that she lost her children for a while. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to skewer this mom because she's going to regret that for the rest of her life anyways.
I know.
We just make decisions that we don't realize.
Every day, actually.
Yeah. So that morning, she tried calling a few more times with no answer. So she told her boyfriend, Victor, that she wanted to drive over later that morning and check on Cassie. But by the time they got dressed and ready to go, it was mid-afternoon.
I don't know how the morning becomes mid-afternoon, but if they haven't been able to reach her, I guess. I mean, she's gone, it sounds like, or has been for a while.
I don't think it would have mattered if they had gone over Saturday. She was killed. We'll find out Friday night after Matt left. So it just would have been discovered sooner.
That just
I don't. That's why I can't like judge the mom too much here. But there is a book out there that I'll discuss later where somebody really goes after Anna, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I think Anna was hanging out with her boyfriend Saturday night. They were probably having some drinks with some friends on the back porch and maybe got caught up in that. And she wasn't worrying because, like you said, 16-year-old. And she's probably fine.
She's a very responsible 16-year-old too.
So I don't want to get into all that because it doesn't matter at this point. She had unfortunately already passed away. So by mid-afternoon, Anna and Victor began driving over, but before they got there, Frank and Allison, the homeowners, and her aunt and uncle actually returned home from their trip.
Oh my God.
So they had a couple of children themselves. They had a 13-year-old daughter, Kelsey, who was Cassie's cousin. She ran inside first. So they pulled into the garage, and then she had a younger brother who was like 5, and Allison was busy getting him out of his car seat and all of that. And Kelsey ran inside first because she was excited to see her dogs and cats, and she wanted to go say hi to her cousin.
Oh my God, that poor girl.
So when Kelsey first entered the house, she noticed some broken glass in the entryway area near the stairs, but figured one of the dogs must have knocked something over. She heard the TV on in the upstairs living room and thought that must be where Cassie was. So she ran upstairs to go say hello, and then she's going to come across a scene that nobody should have to see, especially not a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Cassie was lying on her back in the living room, covered in blood. Kelsey immediately knew that something was wrong, and she ran back outside to find her dad and told him that she thought Cassie was dead.
Oh my gosh.
So Frank immediately dropped what he was doing, unloading the car, and he ran inside and he yelled to his wife, Allison, to call 911. He came up on the scene and knew that Cassie was long gone, and he could tell from the wounds that she had been stabbed. There was blood splattered everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Allison called 911, and as she was on the phone with them, Anna and Victor pulled up into the driveway.
Oh my God.
Frank told Victor that they had found Cassie and she appeared to be dead. And Victor rushed into the house, saw Cassie in the living room, and quickly grabbed Anna. He did not want her to see her baby in that state. So he escorted her back out of the house, and that is where she completely breaks down, just screaming, "My baby."
Yeah.
you can only imagine as a mom. I'm like getting chills talking about this.
I'm already crying a little bit.
Oh my God.
This is all just so freaking tragic.
She took Victor's cell phone and she called Matt, Cassie's boyfriend, immediately, and she began yelling into the phone, "What the fuck did you do to my daughter?" She immediately assumed Matt did something to Cassie. And that would be how Matt would find out that his girlfriend was dead.
He's been the one worried about her this entire time.
Yeah. So during all of this, 911 calls happen and the police show up, and they did a really good job of securing the crime scene, got everyone out, and they began questioning right away about the events of the weekend. And the detective showed up. Like, everything that is supposed to happen did happen in this case.
Okay.
By around 4 p.m., everything was ready to go and the right authorities were on site, and they would begin the walkthrough of the crime scene to start piecing together what happened that led to this horrific stabbing of Cassie Jo Stoddart. Idaho State Police Detective John Gansky and case agent Andy Thomas would be the main two men leading the investigation and eventually interrogations of the suspects that would come out of the details that they found. In the walkthrough of the house, police were able to ascertain that it was not a robbery. There was no forced entry. Cassie was wearing yellow pajama bottoms with moons, stars, and suns, and a white tank top. Her right foot and leg were entangled in a cord coming from the PlayStation plugged into the front of the television. Her legs were slightly apart, and her arms were off to the side with her elbows bent and her arms reaching towards her head. Her head was slightly turned towards her right arm, and the pinky finger of her left hand was nearly severed off.
Oh.
There was a visible knife wound in Cassie's left leg that had blood pooling around it and another large gash in the center of her chest. There were several other wounds on Cassie's body, and there was a cordless phone laying on the floor just a couple of feet away from Cassie's side.
Poor girl.
I can't imagine. As the men traced bloodstains away from the body and back out of the house, they found a light trail of blood dripping basically from that living room to the garage, which is where they determined the killer must have left the home.
So is the killer bleeding, or is it just from the weapon?
I'm guessing from the knife. They find out it's Cassie's blood.
Okay.
So I think they were just carrying the weapon, or they had so much blood on them, it was just dripping. It was a really brutal scene. And the way that her hands were placed, I don't think I had it in here, but it was obvious she was trying to defend herself. She fought them as much as she could. So when they got back into the garage, they walked into an area that the homeowners called their clubhouse, which was just a room located off the garage with some tables in it where they would go to hang out and have some drinks, smoke some weed.
Okay.
Just kind of one of those areas. They noted that there was a breaker box in that room, and they were able to lift fingerprints off of that. The only other findings during the walkthrough was some broken glass at the foot of the stairs and a used condom in the bathroom next to the living room.
Oh no, she was assaulted?
It'll come out she wasn't assaulted. The condom would be because of her and Matt.
Okay.
So fortunately, that is not part of this story.
I'm surprised he put it in their trash can. He should
It was
have taken
actually,
the bag.
if I remember right, it was floating in the toilet and just hadn't been flushed yet. So the detectives left the scene after about 1.5 hours with 48 pieces of evidence and meticulous photos of everything inside the house. Andy and John went straight to work contacting the last person known to see Cassie alive, which was her boyfriend, Matt. He told them he had planned to stay with Cassie on Friday night and that they had told a few people at school that she would be house sitting that weekend, kind of nonchalantly, and joked about having a party, but they weren't really expecting many people to show up.
Mm-hmm.
He did tell the cops at that time that two of their friends, Tori and Brian, had shown up for a little while and relayed everything about walking through the house with them and watching the movie. He did confirm to the cops that the used condom was because he and Cassie had sex before Tori and Brian showed up around 8-ish. He said Tori and Brian left around 9:30-ish and he did not see them again before he left with his mom. He had talked with Tori about spending the night with him that night, but Matt's mom had that surprise plan for him, so she had also told Matt he couldn't spend the night with Tori. Matt had called Tori to let him know that his mom would not let him spend the night, and he said that Tori answered in a very whispered tone on the phone, which Matt assumed meant that he and Brian had gone to a movie. After he hung up with Tori, that is when the weird stuff happened with the lights going out and the dog growling and barking at the stairs. And he told the police that when he left, Cassie was alive and well. He didn't know what happened after that because he was never able to reach her again.
Right.
So from this interview, the cops now had two new people to talk with and an approximate timing of when the murder could have taken place.
Right.
So now we arrive to the real assholes of the story. I'll give it away. Tori and Brian
Oh, I knew it.
are going to be responsible for this murder.
They just stayed in the house.
They're going to do a few things.
Okay.
So they will leave, but they're going to come back.
Okay.
So before we get into what they did and how this murder is going to take place, I want to give you some background on both of these boys. Brian Lee Draper was born on March 21st, 1990, which makes him an Aries.
Isn't that the same birthday as Cassie?
I didn't connect that until just now, but yeah, they have the same birthday.
Wow.
So Brian Draper was adopted by his parents, Carrie and Pamela Draper, along with a younger sister. They spent much of their childhood in Utah, but moved with the family to Pocatello, Idaho when he was a teenager.
Okay.
They were a family with means. They had money. They had a really nice home, and they went on vacations and went fishing and camping often. They seemed like an all-American family. They were part of the Mormon religion, and they had raised their children with those beliefs.
Okay.
His family has been interviewed very sparingly over the years. They don't really like to talk about this. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a child that
Who
does
murdered
something.
someone in this way? Yeah.
In the interviews that they have had, they said they never noticed anything strange about Brian. He just seemed like a normal kid. They said he did okay in school. He had friends, nothing really concerning, but they do blame themselves. In some of the interviews I see, like they're like, we should have seen more signs of this. They just don't know. But you don't know when your child is moody, and you don't assume that that means they're going to do violent things. So
yeah.
Once again, I can't judge parents too harshly here.
No.
One thing that Brian did have was a stutter.
Oh, okay.
Mostly when he would say any word with an S.
Man, if you had listened to me on the last episode I recorded, you know how many times we had mistakes because I could not do my S's. I was getting so mad. Don't you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Actually,
I came upon this part where I just screamed at one point because the S's were driving me nuts.
Well, when you have them all together,
I know.
His stutter was a big source of insecurity for him, as I think it would be for any child.
I think so.
Or adult.
That would be hard to deal with.
At some point during his sophomore year, he became friends with Tori Adamczyk. I would say this is a match made in hell, like we've talked about on other episodes, where it's like if they hadn't come together, I don't think either one of them would have done as crazy of things on their own.
Sure.
But they did feed off of each other.
Yeah.
I don't know why the universe brings these kind of people together, but it happens.
It's karma. They're replaying it. They're not supposed to do what they did in the previous lifetime.
They can't help themselves.
They can't help themselves.
They're supposed to walk away from meeting this crazy person.
Yeah.
So one other note I want to say about Brian before I move on to Tori is that during his high school years, Brian Draper developed a fascination with the Columbine shooters.
Oh, no.
Almost idolizing them.
Oh, dang.
He was already somewhat idolizing these kids before he met and became friends with Tori. And we'll find out that Tori has a dark fascination all his own.
Okay.
So Tori Michael Adamczyk was born on June 14th, 1990, making him a Gemini, unfortunately, very close to my birthday.
Lots of Gemini murderers, unfortunately.
And I think Aries is pretty high up there too, and Virgos. I remember looking this up one time.
It's so hard seeing Virgos there because that's my mom, and she's the last person on the planet that would do something like that.
But there is a difference between the signs, female versus male, too.
And I think there's also a big difference between, for instance, if you're like a December Capricorn or a January Capricorn, that kind of stuff. But really, it actually goes back into your house a whole lot more. You're more ruled by other signs in your chart than your actual sun sign.
So Tori was the middle child of his parents, Shannon and Sean. His older sister, Lacey, had already graduated from high school, but she still lived at home with them for the time being. His younger brother, Jamie, was actively involved in school sports, kind of a jock, popular kind of kid.
Okay.
This family also grew up religious. Not sure if they were Mormon. I did read that Pocatello was a large Mormon place.
Okay.
A lot of practicing Mormons there, but they may have just been Christian. I couldn't really find that. But I know that Shannon, his mom, speaks of raising all of her children in the faith.
Okay, well.
Shannon is an interesting case on her own. She actually wrote a book about this case and her son's involvement. So I will have a little bit more insight about Tori than I do about Brian just because she wrote a book about him.
Right.
Shannon's a little delulu because she doesn't believe that her son had anything to do with this. So
okay.
That's going to be a whole nother part of this conversation episode. Shannon doesn't want to admit that she raised a child that became a killer. Whereas like Brian's parents are like, they're what did we do wrong?
Ashamed.
She never does that. So it's really interesting.
Weird.
She maintains that Tori was a very sweet child. He never got into trouble and that he had plenty of friends. She said they did lead a strict household and he had to check in whenever he went out. He had a very, strict curfew. She recalls him talking about a boy named Brian that was newer to the area in his freshman year of high school and that he didn't like him. She actually remembers Tori saying something like, Brian seems like the type that would be a serial killer.
Oh, okay.
But fast forward a year later and Brian was now his closest friend.
Okay.
She said she thought Brian seemed like an all right kid. This is where in the book, I don't agree with her because she's the one that kind of bashes on Anna and Victor, Cassie's parents.
Okay.
And she also does the same thing to Brian's family. She's like, yeah, they had a lot of money, but I don't think they really, cared about Brian. And she's just one of those very self-righteous kind of people.
Sounds like it.
I did everything right. If Tori hadn't met Brian, he would still be the perfect little child. And Brian's parents sucked and Cassie's parents sucked, but she never does any kind of self-reflection.
Gotcha.
And to this day, she's still in interviews saying her son's innocent. So Shannon, I don't know what's going on there, girl.
Massive denial.
She's on the river of denial. Tori had recently turned 16 and he had been given a red Geo Prism to drive. Shannon and Sean also were pretty well off. Shannon was working at the local newspaper and Sean was a mechanic. They had recently moved into a custom-built home and life seemed good.
Yeah, you got to be well off to have your own house built.
The only real issue that she said she had with Tori was that he seemed obsessed with horror movies.
Oh, so what was that again?
I know.
What was that again, Shannon?
Little Miss Finger Pointer.
Right.
She didn't like it. She didn't feel like it was appropriate for him to be watching all these R-rated movies. He also had posters all over his room. She even states in her book that it was a point of contention in her marriage, whereas she wanted to put a stop to it, but her husband, Sean, told her it was just a regular teenage boy kind of thing and not to take it too seriously, which I kind of agree. Horror movies.
Not everybody goes to extremes.
Yeah, a lot of my friends, me, myself, I loved horror movies in high school. I watched all the Elm Streets. I watched all the Jason movies. Mm-hmm. It would be hard to know. And if he seemed like a normal kid in every other way,
right,
I could see why the dad's like, you need to calm down because she was he needs to only be watching Disney movies kind of mom from what I saw in her interviews.
It's like she is imagining him as this buttoned up child with his hair brushed to one side and then he closes his door and can take off the mask. It's really ridiculous. You have to appreciate your child for who they are.
You have to meet them where they're at.
Yes, or you're not going to see the signs.
And I think that's exactly what's happening here. And I still think to this day, she doesn't know who her child is. And I think he does not reveal his true self in front of his mom or his dad.
Having her still think that is probably something he needs. And so he keeps up the ruse too. And he's probably very manipulative with her.
I mean, I'll have my assessment of what I think of these boys later. But I do think Tori has some signs that he probably needed some mental help at some point. But these parents were not going to help.
Well, just from how we're talking, it sounds like Tori's the crazier one.
I think Tori's the one that pushes things to be done a little bit more.
Okay.
I don't know.
Tori gets it going and Brian's there for the ride.
I can't say good things about either one of them.
No.
We're going to find out later. There's evidence and you're going to see they're both assholes. So. Yeah. He was obsessed with the horror movies, and she mentioned that Tori was always the creative type, and he had dreamed of becoming an architect. But when he became obsessed with horror movies in his early high school years, she saw him switch up and said that he wanted to begin making movies and writing scripts instead. He got a video camera for Christmas or birthday or something, and he began filming things all the time. He was the kid just walking around taking videos in the high school hallways or at home. There's always that kind of kid, I feel like.
Yeah, and this is straight out of a movie, though. There is always that kid with a video camera.
They're usually not
And they usually end up being the killer.
So now we have these two boys coming together. Brian Draper, obsessed with Columbine, and Tori Adamczyk, obsessed with horror movies. And when he's in an interview later, they ask him what his favorite horror movies are. And he says the Halloween franchises and Scream.
Both slashing.
Both are slasher films with knives.
Yep.
So you got these two little dark minds together, and that's when things start going sideways.
And it's not like they can get their hands on guns and other things. So
yeah.
But it is scary when kids prefer the knives because that's much more intimate.
You have to get right up next to your victim.
Right.
And you have to stab them multiple times, usually.
Yeah.
And get covered in their blood. Like, it's...
Yeah. It's a lot.
A sick individual.
Right.
So after the detectives had spoken with Matt Beckham and realized that two other boys had been at the house that night, of course, that was the next two people for them to talk to.
Yeah, and Matt had a really good alibi.
He had a very clear alibi. They knew he was not involved. They ruled him out quickly.
Good.
Knowing that Matt was actually closer friends with Tori than Brian because Matt was going to go spend the night with Tori, they started interviewing Tori first.
Although it does make me question Matt a little bit to have these guys as friends.
Well, what we'll find out is that they were kind of friends with Cassie too. Like they were all kind of, you know, in high school acquaintances where they're all sitting in class together or whatever. I will tell you that Cassie was not expecting Tori and Brian to show up. They weren't really friends of Matt's that she enjoyed being around.
Gotcha.
They did not know that the boys were going to show up. They kind of just showed up.
Interesting. Okay.
So although they had been, you know, telling people that Cassie was going to be alone and they were joking about, you know, having a party or whatever, they didn't really think anyone was going to come over.
Yeah.
So when Brian and Tori show up, it's kind of a surprise. But at the same time, Matt's like, whatever, they're my friends. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really awkward for her too.
It was. And they showed up like right after her and Matt had finished hooking up. And
yeah.
I think she was trying to be like a sweet girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, no girl wants to sit around with her boyfriend and his two like awkward teenage boyfriends. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel like I've been in those situations back in the days and it's like weird. But you also don't want to be like, tell your friends to go away.
Right.
So they interviewed Tori first. They showed up at his home one day after they found Cassie's body.
Yeah.
So they're on it. Tori said that, he had gone over there to the residence and then they left around 8:30 p.m. They were upset because they thought there was going to be a real party there and then nobody else was there except for Cassie and Matt. And then they decided that was kind of lame and that they were going to go see a movie instead at the theater in Pocatello. The detectives asked what movie they went to see and he said they were going to see the Adam Sandler movie Click, if you remember that one. But by the time they got to the theater, they had missed that one and so they went to see the horror movie Pulse instead.
I don't know that one.
I feel like it was one kind of like The Grudge. I think Pulse was the one where maybe they called you through the phone.
Oh.
Okay, so I looked up this movie now that we're talking about, and it has Kristen Bell and Ian, I don't know how to say his last name, Somerhalder.
Somerhalder, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up and watch it.
Interesting. So it did come out in 2006, obviously.
I guess I was distracted.
I was very pregnant as we were talking
about it.
I was definitely not watching a horror movie.
Right.
So anyways, they heard that story, and then they went to talk to Brian, and he said the same thing. He said they were there, and so their stories seemed to match up.
Okay.
But these detectives, of course, are going to keep researching it. And they went to the theater. And what they ran into was that the girl working that night at the movies was a classmate. And she knew Brian and Tori. And she would have known if they came in because she said it wasn't a very busy night at the movies. And it was a late movie. Like the movie they would have been going to started at like 10 o'clock.
Right.
And she's like, no, I definitely would have remembered if they came in because they were kind of the weird kids.
Yeah. Well, good on her.
So the cops knew that. And the other thing the cops did is they went and watched the movie. So they went and watched Pulse.
Oh, so they could question them.
Yes.
Nice.
These interrogation videos are out on YouTube. I watched both of the boys because although they were read their Miranda rights in the station and they were told that they could have an attorney, neither one of them chose to have an attorney present. And I found out, I guess, if there's no attorney in the room, that they can release the tapes as public record. And you can see Brian, especially because of his stutter, it feels like a tell for him. Anytime he starts lying, his stuttering is like 10 times worse.
Yikes.
when Tori was interviewed, his parents stayed in the room with him the whole time. But when Brian was being interviewed, his parents sat outside in the lobby. So Brian was alone with the investigators.
Which to me represents exactly what you kind of told us about their families. Like if Brian did something bad, he needs to own up to it. And his family is like, you go talk to them.
And I can say that both of the families, when the police showed up at their houses, they just assume, nobody assumes their child had anything to do with it. They're just like, oh my God, Cassie's dead.
Yeah.
You happen to be there. Tell the police everything.
Right.
That will help them, figure out who came in and did this horrible thing. Neither of the parents thought their kids did it. And both of the kids are like, no, we were at the movies. And they had told their parents that they were at the movies.
Oh, yeah. So they both think that what can come of this interview? Nothing bad. They're just helping. But then why would Tori's parents sit in there with him?
I think it's because his mom is a very smothering mother.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it comes off.
That's what I got from her. I did read her whole book, and she's living in another reality.
Maybe because in another reality, her son didn't do it. And so her brain is fucking with herself.
So they brought Brian back in for his second interview in the station. And at this time, they had already seen the movie and they had talked to the girl who was working there. And they started asking him all these very specific questions about the movie. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't answer anything. They were like, well, what previews were there? And they were like, what was the movie about? Why did you want to see it? Just basic questions. How did the movie end?
Yeah.
And Brian said, you know what? There was this really cute girl sitting a row over, and I was honestly just so distracted the whole movie that I can't remember anything.
Oh.
And I just love watching this. It made me want to be an interrogator because they don't give him too much.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, oh, who was working the ticket booth? And Brian said, oh, it was a guy working the ticket booth that we bought our tickets from.
Oh.
Police know it was a girl.
Yeah.
They asked if they saw anybody else from school that they knew. And they're like, no, we didn't run into anyone, which they knew he did.
Right.
And then when they start asking him about the movie, he did try and start making some stuff up. And at that point, the police said, well, interestingly enough, we went and watched the movie yesterday. And you can see Brian's face like,
yeah,
fuck, I'm caught. He broke in the second interview. And he said, you're right, we didn't go to the movies. In fact, when we left Cassie's house, I didn't want to tell you this because I thought it would mean I would get in trouble. He's like, we decided to go try and steal things from cars in the neighborhood.
Oh.
So he said they were, going around and like lifting door handles and seeing if they could get into any cars, whatever they could find.
Right. Radios.
And this came about because Tori actually did have a cell phone on him, and the cops had already pulled the cell phone records. So even though they're asking all these questions about the movie, they also knew those boys never left the neighborhood. I don't know how. The boys must have talked to each other because then their next story was that they were breaking into cars, and then the cops were like, well, what did you find? And they're like, not much. Brian told the cops they didn't find anything except like some pocket change. But then they brought Tori in, and during that interview, he said they had stolen some CDs and that the CDs were sitting in his parents' living room. And this is an interesting part because his parents kind of call him out and say, no, those CDs were there before you left on Friday night.
Oh, no.
And so that's a whole other interesting thing. So it was a very quick turnaround with interrogation to know that these boys were lying. They could not keep it together.
Yeah.
And then the next tactic they used is they brought in Brian again. Brian was the weaker link, and they told him that they believed he was a good boy and that like if anything happened, it was probably Tori who had done it.
Right.
They convinced Brian, they were like, if you tell us what really happened first, then maybe you won't get as harsh of a punishment or whatever.
Right.
When the cops had interviewed people in the high school about Tori and Brian, when they were just trying to put it all together, these were the things that they found out. Classmates said that Tori was obsessed with knives and horror movies, and that Tori and Brian together were obsessed with very dark things, and that they had been telling everyone that they were going to write their own horror movie. And the movie script was going to be about a boy, a girl, and a little boy was going to be killed. They had overheard Cassie telling the boys that she wanted to be part of their movie.
Oh, no.
They also said that Tori would mess around a lot, like play acting, like he was stabbing or cutting other people's throats at school all the time, which is kind of odd behavior.
Yeah.
Yet another classmate said that they had heard Tori bragging about wanting to commit the perfect murder. He said he had watched so many movies and he had taken so many notes that he knew how to commit a murder and not get caught.
Well, you failed that miserably, I think.
And then it came out in all of these questionings that Tori had a crush on Cassie for over 2 years.
Oh, of course.
So he's a little obsessed with Cassie. And this is actually what really broke Brian, because Brian had also had a crush on Cassie.
Why the fuck? Like, we can't even be liked.
I know. So it comes out in this that Brian had a crush on Cassie for a while, and he actually asked her to go out with him. And she said, no, I don't see you like that. We're just friends. It sounds like Cassie and Brian were like closer friends, and Tori was just kind of on the outside. And then right after she turned Brian down, she started dating Matt. So there was this whole rejection piece to it as well.
Fuck.
But Cassie would like hang out with them in class, and she did say she wanted to star in their movie that they were putting together.
No, but it's not enough. She rejected them.
During this interview, when they told Brian that Tori had a crush on Cassie, you see his like demeanor change. He's like, no, he doesn't. And they're like, well, that's what he said in his interview. There was like this weird thing. And that's almost like what made Brian turn on Tori, because he's like, wait a minute. You knew I liked Cassie. How dare you like Cassie too?
Her. There's nothing that you get to like anymore. You murdered her.
It's so bizarre to me. It's like this ownership that boys feel, even at this young of an age, towards this girl. So I feel like we'll talk about why she was targeted here in a minute, but there was just this underlying like angst about them wanting to be with her.
So fucked up.
So during this third questioning session on September 27th, so just 5 days after the murder, Brian confessed to killing Cassie. He did claim that it was all Tori's idea, and he thought they were just going to be making a movie, that they were going to show up and scare Matt and Cassie, pretend like they were killing her, but he didn't think that they were actually going to murder her.
Okay.
He said that he did not lay a hand on Cassie, but he helplessly watched as Tori killed her. He told the cops that Tori threatened to kill him if he said anything, so that is why he went along with helping to hide the evidence after the crime was committed. And he told them that he would lead them to Black Rock Canyon, which is where they had buried all the evidence.
Okay.
The police went there, and they found in Black Rock Canyon 2 dagger-style knives, a silver and black handled knife with a smooth and non-serrated blade, a folding knife with a silver blade and black handle, similar to like a Swiss Army survival knife. And it was serrated. They found a homemade Sony videotape, a box of matches. Let me go back to the videotape. The videotape had obviously been burned.
Oh, I was going to say.
So it was damaged. And then they found a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. They found a partially burned notebook. And they found partially melted down masks. And these masks are pretty creepy looking. I will have pictures of these.
Okay. Were they the scream mask?
They were not the ghost. They weren't the ghost face masks.
Ghost face.
They're more similar to like the hockey style mask that Jason wears.
Okay.
And they had red blood all over them. So I think about poor Cassie, because these boys are going to wear these masks when they come in to kill her. And that's what she saw coming at her. She had no idea. I don't think she had any idea it was Tori and Brian.
Unless she heard them talking or something.
Unless they said something. We don't know.
They might have been in the same clothes.
Well, all their clothes are going to be found here. So they found boots. They found black gloves. They found blue latex gloves, a black Calvin Klein dress shirt, and a black Hagar dress shirt.
So they changed to go back.
Brian confesses to how they committed this murder. They've got all of this evidence. They think that videotape is burned beyond recovery.
Oh, but it's not.
But it's not.
Good.
The police are able to send it off to whatever lab. I think it took them like several weeks, but they were able to recover everything on that video.
Oh my God.
This video is available on YouTube in its full entirety.
Why?
And I'm going to play some of it. It's not them murdering Cassie.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be them talking about their planning, and then they're also going to get on the video after they kill her. And I'm going to share some of that audio.
They don't videotape the act. Okay, good.
No, thank God. I wouldn't want to watch that. I would not point anyone to seeing that.
No.
But we're going to find out just how disturbed these boys are here in a minute. So what actually happened that night is that they left around 9:30 p.m. and they went to their car, and they're going to sit in their car and make a video. So I'm just going to play some of this. This is right after they've left Cassie's house.
In his car. The time is 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our 2 friends. And and they are right in that house just down the street.
We just talked to them. We were there for an hour. But
We checked out the whole house. We know there's lots of doors. There's lots of places to hide. I unlocked the back doors, so it's all locked. Now we just gotta wait. And yeah, we're really nervous right now, but we're ready.
we're listening to the greatest rock band
We've
ever,
waited for this for a long time.
Pink Floyd, before we commit the ultimate crime of murder.
We waited for this for a long time.
A long time.
We'll stay tuned.
They're talking so nonchalantly.
They are. That is so scary. Who was the first one talking? Like, who talked the most?
So Brian was the main person talking on that video. So you heard the two different voices. The one that started the whole thing saying, we're here in this car, time is 9:50, all of that was Brian.
It's so weird. Like, I can see why they come off equal, because that's what you feel when they're talking.
Okay, so Brian told the cops that he thought it was just a movie and they were just playing along. You listen to that.
No.
They knew what they were doing.
We've been waiting for this for a long time.
Yes, they both said that. Brian admits in that video that he unlocked the door to get back in,
Right.
which he will admit to later in court and everything. So that was what he did to make sure that they could get back in. And then their plan in this video, when you're listening to them, they were going to kill both of them.
Both of them.
And so remember when I said that Matt called Tori
Yeah.
and Tori was whispering on the phone? He assumed that Brian and Tori had gone to the movie. Come to find out, the reason that Tori was whispering on the phone is because Tori and Brian were sitting in the basement.
Yeah. I had assumed they like unlocked a window or something. I didn't know there was a door down there. All basements are different, but that's what I thought that they did. And that's why this dog is barking, because they're actually down there.
And come to find out, their whole plan was they were going to go in the basement and they were going to make enough noise to draw Matt down into the basement.
Separate them.
Because he's the good boyfriend. He would go check and see what was going on.
Yeah.
They would kill Matt first in the basement, and then Cassie, they would go up and get her later.
Wow. So Matt was saved.
He was, by leaving.
Yeah.
And they sat in the basement waiting, and Matt never came downstairs. And then they went in the garage and turned the power off, hoping that would draw them out, just like a good horror movie or Scream. They're really mimicking Scream. That's why it's called the Scream Murders, because they wear the masks and the all black.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that they did. When they left the house, they went back to the car, they recorded this video, and they changed into the clothing. The black long sleeve dress shirt, black pants, black boots, and then they put the masks on.
Yeah.
One of them had a non-serrated knife and one of them had a serrated knife. This will become important because we're going to see both boys are going to say they didn't do it, but the autopsy is going to show wounds from both types of knives.
Right.
Another piece, I'm not going to play all of this, but on that videotape, they also found videos that were recorded before that Friday.
Okay.
It was recorded on the Thursday, September 21st, and that is when they put in their record, I guess, on the videotape that Cassie is going to be their victim. They also talk about how they've been wanting to do this for a long time, and they've tried it at least 10 times.
What?
And they have shown up at other houses and other girls throughout the school, but the girls were never alone.
Oh.
And then they find out that Thursday that Cassie's going to be house sitting alone. And they get on the video and they say, "We're sorry, Cassie. It has to be you. We're sorry to your family, but this is the perfect opportunity. We have to take it."
Oh my God.
And they go on and on. They think they are up there with top serial killers. They mentioned the Zodiac killer. They sound like real dumbasses. I don't want to give them too much fame, so I'm not going to play all of their stuff, but you can tell that they're unhinged. They're comparing themselves to all these famous serial killers, and they're like, but we're not going to get caught like them. And when the FBI is listening to this tape, they're going to wonder. For them, they thought Cassie was going to be their first of many.
Oh.
These videotapes really seal the nail in the coffin for them. Neither one of them is going to be able to claim innocence.
Yeah.
And the fact that fucking Tori's mom has seen these videos and believes her little baby is innocent.
What the fuck? Really? Wow.
You
That's
have to live on
crazy.
another planet. Because if I saw my kid saying this and she believes he was just play acting and they were just making movies, and I'm like, no, this is deranged behavior.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I will play one other video before they killed Cassie because I think it also speaks to Tori.
Okay. He had a
Because
creepy voice.
the one you heard was more Brian focused.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play a little bit more just so you can get an idea of how unhinged these boys are. And this is going to be from the night before when they decided that Cassie was the one they wanted to kill.
They were sick psychopaths that get pleasure of killing other people.
That sounds good, baby.
We're gonna go down in history. We're gonna be just like Scream, except real life terms. People will die. And then memories will fade.
Memories will fade. I wonder what movie you got that from, Brian.
Myself. That was myself.
No wonder it was so lame.
Okay, we're on our way, and I'll let you stay tuned. We're almost there.
There's like 30 minutes of video that you can watch out there, and they say some really fucked up, disturbing things. They actually have Cassie on video the morning before they killed her. They show up at her locker. This is after they've decided they're going to kill her because they know she's going to be alone, and they come up and just video her and say, "Good morning, Cassie. How are you today?" And you can tell she's just kind of like, "Okay, leave me alone. Get the camera out of my face." But she's also used to them just with the camera, and she's just trying to be nice. And then she's like, "I got to go to class." And that's the last video we have of Cassie. And then it clips to Brian and Tori sitting in their 4th period class, and they're videoing themselves sitting at like a table, and they are saying, "We've made our death list." And they show a notebook, and they have all these names on it and said, "These are going to be all of the people that we're going to take down. Cassie Jo Stoddart is our first victim."
In class.
In class. I'm like, where's the teachers? It's pretty fucked up. There is another part of the video I was trying to find, but there's just so much, and they're really annoying to listen to for me.
Yeah.
Because I think they're evil and gross. But Tori at one point says, after Brian is like talking about she's going to be alone in a big dark house out in the middle of nowhere, like how perfect can you get? I mean, like we're meant to kill Cassie. And Tori makes this comment. He says, "I'm getting horny just thinking about it."
Oh my God.
And then Brian says, "Hell yeah. We're going to fucking kill her and her friends if they're there." Wow. I don't have any sympathy for these guys, and I can't because of this video.
Yeah.
There's another disturbing video that I don't think I'm going to play on here either, but right after they're done killing Cassie, we know that they stabbed her to death. They get back in the car, and they get the fucking video camera out, and they say, "I just killed Cassie Stoddart."
Yeah.
Brian says it. "Oh my God, I can't believe I just killed Cassie. It doesn't feel real. It went by so fast." And you can tell he's kind of excited. And then Tori comes on and he says, "It's time to get our shit together. Stop videoing." And that's when they drove off to Black Canyon and buried all the evidence and burned this videotape that they didn't do a very good job at. So that is all out there that you can watch. I will tell you it's a hard watch.
It's hard listening. I don't even know what they look like yet.
After they found this video and after Brian confessed, they arrested him right away. And then they brought in Tori for his final interview. And Tori had no idea that Brian had confessed and that they had this evidence.
Yeah.
And so Tori is still going along the story of they were breaking into cars.
Right.
They told Tori, "We've already talked to Brian, and we know you went back to Cassie's house and you were in the basement until at least 11:30 p.m. when you came up." Like basically told him that they knew everything. And at that point, Tori says, "I need an attorney." And then the interrogation is cut off. So we don't see any more of that.
Yeah.
And that night they arrested Tori.
Good.
Get these little hellions off the street.
My goodness.
I don't understand. Once again, we talk about it. It's like, how are some people just born?
And they're so young.
They're 16.
I know.
So it went to trial pretty quickly. They had all the evidence they needed.
Yeah.
They had extensive forensic testimony that documented and analyzed Cassie's wounds. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy determined that the cause of Cassie's death was the stab wounds to her chest. All in all, he documented 30
Yikes.
knife-related wounds,
Yeah.
12 of which had the potential to be fatal.
Right.
So they don't know exactly which one killed her, but there were 12 that were hitting major organs or arteries. He testified in court that it was his opinion that there were at least 2 knives used, one of which was a non-serrated blade and one of which was a serrated blade. He did say that he believed the fatal wounds were inflicted by the serrated blade, and I'm only going to mention that because it's going to come up here in a minute when Miss Queen of Delulu Land tries to say her boy didn't kill Cassie because he was using the non-serrated knife.
Oh my
which
gosh.
is the weakest fucking lamest excuse ever. But they know that the serrated blade did strike the right ventricle of Cassie's heart, and it was most likely
what killed
the
her.
kill blow.
Yeah.
Their trials were separate. Brian was tried before Tori. Brian was convicted and sentenced in May, and then his trial and sentencing occurred in June. They were both found guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and first-degree murder.
Good.
They were sentenced to 30 years fixed and an indeterminate life sentence for the conspiracy conviction and a fixed life sentence for the first-degree murder conviction.
Okay.
They were only 16, so these are minors,
yeah.
and they were treated like adults.
Yeah.
Tori immediately appealed the decision because he was a minor and because his attorney is going to say that he used the serrated blade and therefore he did not deliver the fatal blow and therefore he should not be convicted of first-degree murder. So they were trying to get his sentence reduced to just conspiracy because that one had more of a chance of parole.
But here's the thing. Even if there wasn't a fatal blow and she had laid there bleeding out, she still would have died.
And he wanted to murder her. Like there was 30 fucking wounds on this
exactly
girl's body.
That's what I'm saying.
They wanted to kill her.
A doctor who's doing her autopsy has to say what he thinks is what killed her. That doesn't release him from responsibility of being part of the act.
No. So I can tell you both of their appeals. I'm pretty sure Brian's attorney appealed based on his age because he was a minor to try and get a reduction in sentence, but their appeals were all denied.
Appeals are usually always denied.
I believe Tori had a couple of other, I didn't put it all in here, but his parents still believe that he's innocent somehow, and they have hired multiple attorneys to try and get him out.
So weird. Isn't that kind of like, who was the killer in Texas that you just recently did? Why am I forgetting his name? McDuff.
And his crazy mom.
Yeah, similar.
You don't want to accept that your child's a monster. Well, sorry.
He is.
And it could be of no fault of your own. He was just born with some screws loose and you accept it and move on. Brian and Tori are still locked away to this day.
Well, it wasn't extremely long ago. What are we talking about? Is that 18 years?
18 years.
Okay.
They are in the same prison.
Really?
They see each other in passing quite often.
Interesting.
But they never talk to each other.
No, because they both went against each other. And I'm sure Tori really hates Brian now.
So I did watch a documentary called Lost for Life, which is about, I guess, children really, because they were minors when they were convicted and given life sentences. And they interviewed Brian and Tori.
Okay.
And you can see a very stark difference between these boys. And this is why I'm going to say Tori had to have been more of the instigator than Brian, even though Brian said some disgusting things and is a disgusting person.
Yeah.
Tori, his parents are in every fucking interview.
What the fuck? Grow up. Move on.
He's never seen without his parents.
Why?
And we go to this interview and he doesn't even say 2 words. His mom is sitting there talking the whole time like, he's just a good boy. And like,
what?
It was bizarre.
It's creepy. Is
and
what it
he's
is.
Full on saying, yeah, I didn't do this. It's like he's wearing a mask and he wants his parents to believe that he's still this good little boy.
Well, yes, because in all honesty, they're his only chance of getting out if they just keep it up and keep it up and keep it up.
His attorney's probably saying, don't ever admit guilt. And so he's never admitted guilt to this day.
Yeah.
So his mother wrote this book called The Guilty Innocent about her poor son. I will say it would be hard to be the mother of a murderer, and you do feel for her a little bit when you read the book about, you know, what could I have done different, all of that. But it's hard to feel much for her when she goes into delusional territory.
Right. Yeah.
Tori does speak up one time in the interview on his own without Mama holding his hand and says, you know what? The news just made me seem like a psychopath. Like I'm a cold-blooded killer, but it wasn't me. It was Brian. And he said, I wasn't even that good of friends with Brian. I hadn't been hanging out with him very long, just a few weeks before the murder, which we know isn't true. And he said, it was probably my fault and I should have seen it from Brian, but he just didn't seem capable of something like this. And he caught me off guard. He maintains that he thought they were just making a movie and that they were just going to scare their friends. So each of them had the same story, that the other person did it and they watched and they thought it was just a movie. And he said, I made a lot of mistakes and I look at myself now. And when this interview happened, he was only 21 years old. So this was only 5 years after he was put away.
Oh, okay. A lot has happened since then.
Yeah, I don't know that I have one of him now, but at 21 during this interview, Brian's been interviewed multiple times. I think this is the only one of Tori.
Okay.
He said, I was so stupid and now I'm locked up in here paying for someone else's mistakes.
Okay, Tori.
5 years after he was still playing the victim card.
So does Brian show remorse in his videos?
Here's what I see from Brian. I see someone who is reflecting on himself. And he says, you know what? I just wanted to belong in high school. I didn't feel like I fit in. I had a stutter. None of the girls wanted to date me. And he said, I got sucked into Columbine. Columbine created a subculture for disenfranchised kids who didn't fit in. I saw at the time that they transcended their high school for the 1 hour that they did what they did. And I wanted that spotlight. So he admits that.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about Cassie. And this is where you can tell he's got some remorse, because he said Cassie was such a sweet person. She was always kind to him and they always joked around in class. He was attracted to her. It did hurt him when she started dating Matt. He said it made him feel like a loser. And that when he met Tori, and Tori was obsessed with the movie Scream, he thought that they could do things together. Like they wanted to make the movies and all of that. But he said that Tori started going into the darker territory and saying we could commit a murder like they did in the Scream movies. Brian admitted what he wanted to do was something more like Columbine. He wanted to be a school shooter.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say that.
Right.
But he said they bonded, they became friends, and he felt not alone for the first time with Tori.
Yeah.
And so it just
So
fed
it's not
this.
really remorse. It's just acceptance of, hey guys, this is who I am. I'm a murderer and I was going to do it one way or another. I wanted to shoot up a school. I wanted to murder someone at some point.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. And he's just accepted his fate. I'm in prison now for what I did. Here I am.
He says, when I first got to prison, I tried to blame others. And then I met an individual in here and he asked me what happened. And I told him, and they said, you need to admit that you killed her.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that was really his enlightenment, I guess, that he needed to stop saying he was innocent, stop the bullshit and say, you know what? I killed her. And he said, I owe a tremendous debt to Cassie. And the only way I can begin to repay that is to tell the truth of what happened and not dishonor her. I'm doing that. It's very hard, but it's really all that I can do. And he said he feels like he's obligated to do that for Cassie. So I do feel like that's remorseful in a way.
I mean, I'm glad he got to that point, but would he have if they did not catch him?
I don't know. He says, you know, I have a chance right now. Cassie doesn't. She's dead and there's nothing I can do to change that now. I did something terrible and I deserve the consequences that were given to me.
Good.
He does mention of Tori. He says Tori has been in prison for 6 years now and he's still on his first day. He's not progressing at all. He says that Tori is definitely not completely innocent like he claims. I am guilty of killing Cassie. Tori is guilty of killing Cassie. And that's where they need to start. He also talks about having horrific dreams, very graphic, that he relives the murder and sees Cassie dying quite often. Brian's family doesn't come and visit him quite as often as Tori's family.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's very hard for his family.
Yes. He breaks down talking about his parents and saying that he let them down and that he had the best parents ever and he doesn't deserve them. They're special. And he caused his dad to cry and he regrets that quite strongly, and he says some really sweet things about his parents. He ends the whole interview crying. He is like full on breaking down, and he just says, I wish I could go back in time. I do, in watching that, feel like Brian realizes the gravity of what happened and is living with it. He's not fighting it. Yeah, that's what I'm
saying. It's acceptance. It sucks. You know, you're a stupid fucking teenager, and most kids don't take it to the level that you did.
He also, in that interview, while he's crying, says, I wish I had not unlocked that basement door. He said that's the thing. If he could change anything that happened, he's like, if I just had not unlocked that door, we couldn't have gotten back in.
Yeah. But it sounds like they had tried this multiple times before.
They were going to do it eventually.
They were going to do it eventually. It just ended up being Cassie, and you got caught for it. So now your regret and the work that you're doing now to honor her is because she was the one.
And
that's
you're
it.
caught. Like you said, would they have kept going?
They might have. I think back to Sean Sellers. You know, it was just supposed to be 1, 2 right in the beginning, and then it became 2, and then it became 3. And then in the video that you showed me, they're talking about going on and on and on and on. If Matt had not been there that night, or if they did manage to kill both of them, there's actually a possibility they would not have been caught, because it sounds like the only reason the police knew about Tori and Brian is because Matt told them.
Yeah, I actually have that in a discussion point here in a minute. Is the fact that Matt left is the whole reason Tori and Brian got caught. Nobody would have known those 2 boys had been over there.
Yeah, we'll never know. We'll never know what the other scenario would have been like.
They wouldn't have even been interviewed by the police.
Right.
I do want to go back one thing. They lifted the fingerprints on the breaker box. I mentioned that whenever they were doing the walkthrough. Those ended up being fingerprints that traced back to Anna's boyfriend, Victor. So Cassie's stepdad.
What?
So at one point he was seen as a suspect.
That's a very interesting thing, though. Was he just there one day helping the dad?
He had been over there helping them do some work because he was some kind of skilled tradesman or something. But like at some point they looked at him, which makes sense. The mom's boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I think because of us having this, if Matt had been killed, that guy could have gone down for it, because they would have never traced it back to these boys. True. The video was in the middle of Black Rock Canyon. Like they would never.
They would never have found it.
If Brian had not had the guilty conscience to lead them to this evidence, I think even they could have gotten away with it. They could have denied it.
Right.
But he broke down and led them to this video. They're literally in a car saying, I just killed Cassie, sitting in the driveway right by her house.
Right.
So
yeah,
I'm glad it all went down the way it did, so that these 2 motherfuckers are locked away.
Yes.
And will never get out. Maybe. The whole reason this Lost for Life documentary came out is because...
Are they advocating to get them out?
The United States Supreme Court on June 25th of 2012 issued a historic ruling. It was Miller versus Alabama, and it held that mandatory life without parole sentences for children 17 or younger convicted of homicide are unconstitutional. So this is something that is now going on. It has been knocked back to the lower courts in each state to decide individuals' fate. So there is now a chance that the sentences could be changed for Brian and Tori.
I mean, I understand this ruling. I do. Because they're children.
Their brains aren't developed.
They're not developed. And some of these situations of these kids who get life in prison for murder when they're a teenager are actually self-defense, and they're going to jail for it. So I see the purpose of this in some ways, but for these, look at how like diabolical they were so young.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
And then you've got Tori, who is still to this day denying it. To me,
scary.
That says something like sociopathic.
Absolutely.
This guy doesn't have remorse.
Nope.
At least Brian is showing remorse, but he's also like accepted his fate. Like, yeah, I deserve this. So I don't see him trying to fight to get out.
He would gladly accept it still.
I mean,
though.
anybody would leave if they could.
Yeah.
Would he be a danger to society if he left?
He still might.
He might be.
You could want to be remorseful and do all that, blah, blah, blah. But if you're out here in the real world and you're still a guy with issues and you get rejected, you might not be able to stop yourself.
I know.
Isn't that fucked up?
It is. On this documentary, there is a expert, like psychologist, and she says that kids shouldn't be put in life sentences without parole because she believes, and she says, in my experience, all children can be rehabilitated. She said the chance that a child cannot be is very small.
No, not if you have a severe mental disorder that causes you to do these things. And if you're not, I understand that a lot of people have mental disorders and they have a way to manage it and it doesn't get to this. But I think there's something that we also don't know about the people that take it to the heights of murder, right?
So many kids have fucked up high school experiences.
Yeah.
So many kids are made fun of. You know, I can think of several from my high school that got picked on or were the weirdos or, you know, could have been the school shooters if that was going to happen in my school. And they're okay today. Like most of them do come out of it. But for them to follow through with something at that age, there's something severely wrong with them to snap to that level.
The only place I would see it is if like the murder happened as part of gang initiation or something, you know, and you're caught in the wrong group. That's not someone sitting there like, oh my God, I can't wait to murder. I'm getting horny off of thinking about murdering this girl, you know. All these are very different types of people.
Yes. And actually in that documentary, there was one boy who was part of a gang. Yeah. And he killed a woman through the initiation. And that one, I was like, okay, I could see that one. Right. Because that was a peer pressure. You have to do this or you're thrown out of the gang. And it's a scary
peer pressure.
Very. But these two guys, I hope they're not let out. It was said that with this 2012 ruling from the Supreme Court, there are now 2,000 offenders sitting in jail right now, sentenced as juveniles to life without parole, and they're just awaiting their decisions. That seems high to me, 2,000. I don't know why. What's wrong in this country if we have 2,000 people who committed homicide under the age of 18?
Yeah, that's a lot. But over how many years?
Yeah.
It depends. Decades.
The other sad thing I have is that Cassie's mother, Anna, never got over losing her daughter.
Oh, how can you?
And Brian's parents were very sweet to her from what I saw. Like they did whatever they could. I didn't see that from Tori's parents.
No, of course not.
Tori's mom kind of bashed Anna in her book. And so I don't know. I'm like, maybe the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
It's kind of sounding like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about Sean so much because he's not mentioned like the dad of Tori, but Tori's mom's got something going on.
Yeah.
Anyways, Anna did pass away in 2022.
Oh, that's sad.
From cancer. She had a long battle with cancer, and so she's now hopefully reunited with Cassie.
Hopefully they are together somewhere, or they have both reincarnated in some way in their families' lives.
I hope so.
Because she also died tragically. She was very, very sad, and then to go in cancer.
I feel like I hear that in a lot of these young deaths, like teenagers, the parents don't do well.
No.
Because it does. I mean, it like puts a hole in your heart and your body. Like you can't function at 100% ever again.
The only thing really you can do is fight, especially if there's an injustice, you know, like we have with Michaela and her mom. And I don't know how I would live.
I don't
honestly.
know either. Anna was at both of the trials, so she did get to see the boys locked up.
She got justice.
But still, it's
you
like,
don't
why?
get your daughter back. They just chose her because she happened to be...
It was an opportunity.
Staying the night with no one.
If they didn't know that she was out there, she didn't tell them, like they would have just kept going on to someone else. They said in one of their videos they had tried it 10 times.
That's crazy to me.
And they mentioned other girls' names.
And this also brings up for me the importance of keeping your plans and locations to yourself, especially around boys and men that you don't know very well.
Never say you're by yourself.
No.
It's true.
It's
you
really
want to teach that to your high school kids. Well, I think about like I babysat all the time.
I know.
And I remember telling boys I was babysitting because they would call me because I was like bored while the kids were asleep. I could have been a victim just as easily as Cassie. And you don't think about that, especially not coming from another high school boy.
We also, though, grew up in a different time, I think. Nowadays, how I am with my daughter is much different than I was allowed to grow up.
Yeah, we weren't told. I mean, we were told some stranger danger stuff, but
I was roaming the streets alone, so I don't know.
I was going out and meeting boys in the middle of nowhere.
Me too. I was
sneaking out of my house.
I was like in the middle of ditches.
Yeah,
like somewhere that was a perfect place to kill me.
I was by the lake. It's just they could have disposed of my body.
So many opportunities. We made it, Kendra. High five.
Made it. Woo-woo. Thank God we didn't meet a Tori or a Brian.
I won't say that
we
I haven't.
probably did meet them.
I feel like I knew several guys who kind of acted like that. What's scary is what they say to each other without other people there to hear how fucked up they are.
Yeah. And the videotapes, I haven't even scratched the surface with what I shared on how fucked up these kids are.
Yeah.
And now they're men living in prison where they should stay.
Yep.
Hopefully forever.
We shouldn't have any young listeners, but if you are young, Stay safe.
Yes.
If anything happens anywhere you are, let someone know. Call your parents.
I know. I just
Leave.
think about it. Like, Cassie should have left with Matt. If Matt had stayed there, they would have killed him. I believe
100%.
that.
I mean,
Although
they
he
said
could
it
have
in the
fought
video.
back, maybe.
He might have been able to fight back, but there's 2 of them against 1.
And they were coming at
they
her
were
in the
trying to-
dark. Remember,
Exactly.
they turned the power off.
Mhm.
Nobody would have seen them.
Yep.
They would have stabbed Matt first, and
Yeah.
then Cassie. They would have both died. I think, in a way, Matt leaving is what led to them being caught. All that karmic or whatever. I wish, she had just gone with Matt, and then they would have moved on to the next girl. Or it would have been Cassie at another time. Who knows? They would have kept watching.
Well, if she had called her mom too about the stuff, they might have come up to the house and checked on things, or at least the dad. Anyway,
So don't be a
wow.
responsible child. Don't stay behind for the dogs.
Who knows?
Those dogs will be fine.
I mean, you can go throw shade and blame anywhere you want in a story like this, but
we never know.
just
what,
be safe.
Yeah,
if you feel like something's off, you need to do something
get out
about
of there
it.
if you can.
It's a scary world.
Very.
And there's a lot of fucked up boys and men in it, unfortunately.
It's always boys and men.
You're allowed to be here, but damn it, it's always you guys. So
Can you stop hurting us, please?
please, if we reject you and you happen to like us and we say no, that doesn't give you permission to murder us.
No.
It's so fucked up. My God. Thank you for the episode, Kendra.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're all welcome for another fucked up episode from Lucid Lab.
Now I'm all fired up.
I know this one makes you
Mad.
really mad.
Yes.
And also just what leads to these young boys
I know. What?
wanting to do this. Like,
I don't believe that Tori watched one scary movie and was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. Like something
Yeah.
is in his body, something's in his brain.
and that's why he was drawn to the movies to begin with.
right.
And then Brian was made fun of because of a stutter, and he idolized the Columbine guys because they got fame, and he said rose above it.
Mm-hmm.
That's also not normal. Like,
It's
if you're
not normal.
idolizing a killer.
Yeah. And he's adopted, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't technically know exactly what happened to him before his parents adopted
parents
him.
don't know.
So interesting.
Anyways,
Come back next week for our exciting new rerun situation
Yes.
because we have to. And we're only one person throughout the day. So thank you and listen.
please listen, and you can find us on social media, although we're not doing a lot on social media lately. Sorry.
We have had technical difficulties, just FYI, and
Yes.
having some issues with this software that we use. And so that's why it didn't go out last week, but it shall happen.
I don't know if I'll get one out for this.
We will figure it out. And
We-
it's not like
yes.
you guys are going to our socials anyway. Let's be
No,
honest. But
no.
go there anyway. TikTok. Go ahead, Kendra.
Go there and become a follower. We're on TikTok because we will have cool stuff at some point. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Now, YouTube is good. You can go
YouTube
there.
is great.
All of our episodes are posted, and you can leave comments, which we love.
Oh, and we found out recently that on Spotify, you can leave comments on each episode. I didn't know that. So it must be a new feature. I found it by accident.
So figure that out and leave us some comments there.
Figure that
if you
out.
want.
If you would like to send over some story suggestions or a lab report, please send those to lucidlabpodcast@gmail.com. And we're going to say, have an amazing time in Peru, Kendra. And please have a spiritual awakening for both of us.
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll drag you back there next time or somewhere else.
Think about me in one meditation.
Okay. I'll put all the good things out into the earth. In the meantime,
Stay lucid, guys.
bye.
Bye.